So I was watching two different pieces of animated media. One was Marvel Zombies on Disney+, the other, the new Homestuck Pilot by Vivzipop, and both left me with the most profound reaction to anything I've ever witnessed. They both sucked. It's like these were two sides of the same coin, two sides of a nickel, the most mediocre coin. Now, this isn't a comparison of both shows, but instead about how two animation works were able to essentially tank themselves in pretty much opposite ways from each other. So for those who know nothing about either of these, what are they about? Marvel Zombies is just the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but set in a zombie apocalypse. Homestuck, from what I gather watching the pilot multiple times, it's about a quirky Chungus gamer talking to his Discord friends. I couldn't even figure out what this one was about. If there was a plot, it went over my head. We'll go over that later. Neither one of these have anything in common with each other other than they're both animated, they gave me diarrhea, and I'm weeks late to talking about them. The problems they suffer aren't enough to make them irredeemably terrible, because they're not, but they represent two extremes of how animation shouldn't necessarily be handled. Let's start with Marvel Zombies. I'm a big Marvel guy, for better or for worse these days, and I feel with the great success of the MCU, it's only natural to want to capitalize on the many characters and properties under their belt. But I feel the animated Marvel projects on Disney Plus leave a lot to be desired, where the true potential of animation as a medium is wasted, with what ends up being corporate slop put together because it's cheap than bringing back all the actors rather than something that takes advantage of the medium. Turning our focus over to Homestuck, well, I just didn't get it. Okay, I'm not a Homestuck fan. Sorry, Homestuckers, but I've never read it. I'm familiar enough to know the general vibe, and it's always looked like something up my alley, so I was a little disappointed having watched it and needing to ask myself, what's so special about this? Whatever was appealing about the original Homestuck webcomic certainly wasn't conveyed here. It feels like the opposite of Marvel Zombies' problem, where instead of out-of-touch executives, the animators have full control, but almost unchecked control, with no oversight to ensure that new viewers easily slide into the world. And there we have a spectrum of animation where a clash for control can really affect the outcome of the product, but solving the issues of either side isn't simply a matter of meeting in the middle. So corporate media executives are notoriously bad at understanding and choosing what has artistic merit or entertainment value. It's actually become a bit of a trope, but their job isn't to entertain people, it's to make money. No matter how good they are at identifying what works, it'll always be second priority to profits. Marvel Zombies' problem stems from the very series it spun off from, Marvel's What If. It's basically an anthology of Marvel Cinematic Universe alternate universe stories. And if Zombies scream cheap cash grab, then Marvel's What If is cheapy McCheapskate. What If and Zombies use the same art style, and boy are they ugly. Obviously chosen for economical reasons rather than necessarily artistic expression. As an extension of the MCU, it tries to capture the likeness of characters but ends up with an uncanny mess of a character model. The show feels at odds with how it wants to portray itself. The character models are clearly based on the live-action actors from the films and shows. The only liberties taken are with the facial expressions. But Zombies takes the same approach as What If with a cel-shaded flat look. I do realize that changing the models probably isn't the most cost-effective thing to do for a limited-run 4-episode Marvel series with hundreds of unique characters, but the least they could do is take those same models and reshade them. Do something a little more striking. The entire time I was thinking of those Final Fantasy and Resident Evil 3D animated films and how fun it would be if they just committed to that instead. Though the way the Marvel zombie characters are modeled, it might not be suited for that kind of look. Have you ever played the Hellboy game? I haven't, but I've always liked that look. Or try to capture the look of the comic. While I didn't like the animation in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I thought the character designs and art direction captured that Steve Ditko look well. I don't know, something to give this show a little bit more life because the characters look just as dead as the zombies. I can understand at least Vivzipop and Spindlehorse not having all the funds and maybe things slip through the cracks on the Homestuck pilot. But Marvel's got no excuse, they've got that Disney money, so why aren't they investing more when they've learned time and again with their own Marvel projects that quality ultimately is key, except for Thunderbolts. I'm still mad we failed Thunderbolts. Maybe it'd be too different of a leap from the original Marvel Zombies run in the comics, but hear me out. Do it as an anime. I mean, we got a Suicide Squad isekai and got to see Amanda Waller get crunk. Anything's possible. Plus, Marvel has done anime projects in the past. It's like the art style in Marvel Zombies can't pick between wanting to be realistic, but also wanting to be expressive in a way only cartoons can. But I think an anime-inspired style bridges that gap. Now, easier said than done, but again, this is Disney. They could front that bill. We have precedents for anime made by Western creators. A YouTuber just released an anime short not too long ago, and that's not to mention anime-inspired Western animation like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Boondocks. And if not anime, look at what DC has been doing with Creature Commandos, a show I have not yet watched. Oops, sorry James Gunn. But even beyond that, the DC animated universe shows from the early 2000s were able to tell stories in a much more grounded and interesting way than zombies ever could hope to do. As for Homestuck, I actually think it has a pretty solid art style. Again, I don't know the webcomic, but at a glance, I really like how it translates what came out of the comic. On character designs and actual animation alone, they did a good job. My thing, however, is that I felt the compositing could have been cranked up a bit, and the boarding could have been more interesting. With such a simple art style, I feel the characters blend too much into the background. I think adding a little more visual interest in the lighting can help keep the show from looking flat. Of course, they could just totally change the backgrounds, that's an option too. So I was a Newgrounds kid growing up, so I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but it looks like a Newgrounds cartoon. Again, that's not a bad thing, but I feel like with a name like VivziePop attached to it, it has a bit of a pedigree to live up to. And I know this doesn't have any of that sweet A24 money that Has-Been has, but people on Newgrounds were scrappy with little to no budget and could make some great shots, sometimes as singular animators. I feel Homestuck could have done a little bit more. Where Marvel Zombies' art style felt restricted by what I assume are corporate overlords wanting to keep it cheap, Homestuck feels like the opposite, where unfettered artistic control gives it no direction, while may seem like endless visual possibilities become aimless abandon. A pilot with a solid skeleton of animation with only lean meat on the bones. I can really respect that they tried to preserve the webcomic look, but I feel they've tunnel visioned themselves into sticking so close to it that they haven't tried to push beyond the artificial limitation that they've set for themselves. Look at other indie animation like LS Mark's Catching Up, very clearly inspired by the Fairly OddParents art style, but tries to do just a little bit more. Derivative is fine as long as you try to add to what you're deriving from in some way. Speaking of, the pilot reminded me a lot of Scott Pilgrim, and I'm personally a big fan of that series. A glance at the Wikipedia page even mentioned Scott Pilgrim creator Brian Lee O'Malley praising Homestuck. I think it's awesome that it reminds me of another series I dearly love, but why should I watch Homestuck versus just watching more Scott Pilgrim? And that leads us into our next problem, the writing. Nothing about Homestuck really gave me any hint to its general premise. We're introduced to John, and throughout the pilot, he talks to his friends, Dave, Jade, and girl number 2. The interpersonal dynamics between the group are fine enough, but what the hell are their motivations? Who are they, and who are these people they're teasing at the end?
Who are you people?
Why doesn't John want to celebrate his birthday? What's up with his dad? Is this show going to be very meta and fourth wall breaking? At least how much does that factor into the world outside of the split screen call gags and acknowledging the narrator? This pilot breeds more questions than it does answers, which is fine once you've been greenlit and are guaranteed a season's worth of episodes. But a pilot where you're trying to establish the status quo? I don't think so. Not that a status quo was even really established. You still need to ease in the audience by answering those questions. It's clear that the world works on some kind of video game logic, again similar to Scott Pilgrim, but how does that make Homestuck special? Maybe it was special when the webcomic came out, but this kind of stuff isn't necessarily shocking these days. The Homestuck pilot, as it should be, was clearly made for Homestuck fans, but as an entry point for outsiders, I don't think it works. It's never a bad idea to give it some sort of general appeal. You can cater to newcomers without sacrificing what makes Homestuck Homestuck. Or at least what I assume Homestuck is. Clearly I couldn't get a clue. But of course it's a VivziePop show, so it caters to whoever finds gratuitous swearing galore funny. Oh wait, does John say the N-word? Gamer from Mars, you're gonna have to add Toby Fox to your list. I'm just surprised no Broadway actors or Brandon Rogers in the cast. I'll give it to her, VivziePop keeps these Broadway actors from going hungry, crossing the aisle to Marvel Zombies, and it suffers from bad dialogue syndrome.
I know, it's weird, but you'll get used to it.
Maybe.
Some people get used to it.
Now, bad dialogue has been plaguing Marvel movies as of late.
I don't know what to be.
I don't know, just don't be a dick.
But it's been especially more pronounced in animation.
Most likely it's been...
Shrunk.
Why didn't you point at me? I knew that.
I feel the voice direction is overly exaggerated, making these awkward exchanges twice as cringy.
This yellow one?
No.
Oh, that one right there?
The other yellow one.
Okay.
Some of the interactions on the show resemble dialogue in that one game, Dustborn, that was getting a lot of hate for its writing. Of course, it's exacerbated using characters like Jimmy Woo, the police officer from Ant-Man and the Wasp and WandaVision, who keeps trying to have quips.
We gonna talk about the top bunk? You want it, right? How bad?
Or how about Aqua fucking Fina? Seriously, she's in this and she survives till the end. Side note, in the middle of me editing this, Megan Fox was announced as the voice of Toy Chica, and damn, she is such a bad bitch though. Also, Kellen Goff and Matt Pat. Anywho, one character I noticed that really shows the lack of effort in Marvel Zombies is Melina Vostokov. If you don't remember her, she was in the Black Widow film as Natasha and Yelena's fake mom. Garbage film, but I thought she was a fine character. She's played by Rachel Weisz, who portrays her with a more reserved but authoritative presence. She was smart, witty, but complex. Far from Carrie Walgren's more stereotypical Russian accent, this makes Melina sound more like Zarya from Overwatch.
Огонь по готовности!
It's okay, Carrie Walgren, we still like you for being Mio Amakura. Now, the numerous sacrifice plays in this 4-episode series were repetitive,
Shit.
but none as annoying as her locking herself in with Zombie Okoye to proclaim that science can beat the zombies. It doesn't. But like, couldn't she have just shut the door in front of her instead of locking herself in? That tablet she's holding looks mighty wireless. To top off the character inconsistencies, her two fellow Black Widow companions, Yelena Belova and Red Guardian Alexei Shostakov, they can't decide which one should be written as an emotional wreck and go back and forth, unable to choose who's who. One project a bottom-of-the-barrel cash grab, and another trying way too hard. Neither giving any real substance to the plot, the characters, the settings. Let's take a look at other works that do this so much better. The Amazing Digital Circus has been outstanding. I'll admit I wasn't necessarily hooked when I watched the first episode, but Pomni's genuine existential panic and uncovering more of this unfamiliar world around her was enough to keep me going. Now don't forget, I said Homestuck should have done it all in its pilot episode. Digital Circus didn't leave me with glaring unanswered questions, it just left the door open. There's a difference. And by the time I watched the second episode with Gummy Goo and Pomni's interaction, that was what ended up solidifying it for me. Then the new Knights of Guinevere pilot, while not necessarily a show I'm looking to continue watching, accomplishes hooking the audience with an interesting enough premise. I found Smiling Friends has way more substance than either Homestuck or Marvel Zombies, even though it's episodic. The show itself is written around a basic story formula where the main characters have to solve a problem and help someone smile. And damn, that works. The team knows what their goals are, they're not under-accomplishing, but they're not over-accomplishing as well. But what am I supposed to take away from either Marvel Zombies or Homestuck? I don't care about John and his obsession to get the beta. The inventory system was cool, but we really didn't have to have the in-your-face explanation for how it works. Or maybe we don't pit two characters, one of which is Captain Marvel, who really shouldn't be a zombie, she's usually off-planet, and the other is Icarus from that bad Eternals movie who isn't a zombie. Literally, they say he's not a zombie, but shouldn't care to be wasting time on Earth, considering he was perfectly willing to let the whole planet die. Homestuck needs to figure out how it wants to convey its identity, allow the audience to learn about the world it's set in. I've watched this pilot at least 4 times and it's still not clear. Marvel Zombies needs to take risks, separate itself from What If, as well as take itself more seriously. The flaws of over-corporatization and the flaws of unlimited artistic direction are apparent when you fail to connect to the viewers, when you fail to entertain. That's really what it boils down to. Big animation companies can help provide animators with resources. Animator-run projects can be an unrestricted playground where you don't have to worry about someone watching over your shoulder and disapproving. But like everything, it's gotta be in moderation, because it's possible to go off the deep end and lose any benefit either one affords. In all honesty, I thought both had potential, but it's missing just enough to make either one worthwhile. All they had to do was consider if anyone watching this would actually care. But also, we could consider no more Aquafina. Please!